to have you with us in the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Tonight, we'll be focusing on 4 of the biggest stories of the day. We will begin with the journalists, 2 journalists who've been arrested by the Tripura police over the reportage that they did and their conduct when they went to Tripura on reporting. And whether this raises a serious question about press freedom being targeted in the garb of maintaining law and order. We're also going to bring you details as story number 2 about the tenure for ED and CBI chiefs. And the tenure that's been extended by this government up to 5 years via an ordinance. Again, triggering a massive debate about this government overusing the ordinance route rather than actually going through an exhaustive conversation and then getting a bill passed via the parliament. We're also going to get you the story about the latest movie that's come out, Jai Bhim, and that's landed into a controversy just as soon as it came out. Legal trouble for actor Surya, who's in this movie, and PMK that's raised objections to the commentary that's come through for Vanayar community in this movie. We're going to talk about that as well. And then we will get you a horrifying story that has emerged from Maharashtra, where a 17-year-old was allegedly raped by multiple people. The numbers actually vary, go into hundreds, but since those numbers have to be confirmed post-investigation, we're not giving you that. But over a period of 6 months, she was horribly exploited, we are being told to understand. These are the big stories that we'll focus on. Let's start with the first one. 2 Delhi-based women journalists who were arrested in Assam's Karimganj district have now been granted bail today by a Tripura court. Now, what happened here? This happened after the Tripura cops filed a case against these 2 journalists, young journalists, both of them, for publishing and broadcasting news that allegedly was instigating communal tension. Now, these 2 journalists visited Tripura for 3 days in the aftermath or around the time that the violence was unfolding there. In fact, one of them was, while she was reporting, also part of the coverage that we did. She was on our channel telling us what she had found out and what sources that she has over there had been telling us was going on. She's now been booked, arrested, is out on bail. So they were on a reporting assignment to cover the alleged vandalism that took place at religious places, places of worship in Tripura a few weeks ago. A fringe group then went and filed a complaint against these 2 journalists, accused them of promoting enmity, trying to rile up people on ground over there as they reported what they saw. So an FIR was filed against Samriddhi and Swarna. They both belong to the HW News network, and they were charged for being part of a criminal conspiracy. Now, this is not the first one. But what did the police say about these 2? Why have they taken action basis this complaint? Because they said that the posts by Sakunia were not true. The posts were promoting a sense of hatred between communities. Remember, these were instances of violence and clashes and vandalism that did come out of the kind of communal violence we were seeing in Bangladesh. And it was in the aftermath of that this tension took place in Tripura. So obviously, communal tensions were at that point a factor there. The police says that this journalist posted a video of a visit to a half-burned, damaged prayer hall, and that the report mentioned burning of a holy book, which is contrary to the findings of the police investigation so far. Contrary to the findings of the investigation so far. And that they went and they spoke to these journalists, and then they were asked to stay in Tripura. But the journalists left instead and rather than going to Agartala, tried to escape to Assam. They said that the team of lawyers had made similar claims in October because all of this is vested interest which is trying to flare up communal tension. Now, viewers will remember this. The first time when we covered this in prime time was because over 100 people, including lawyers and activists and journalists, had been booked under UAPA, which is essentially an anti-terror law. They had been booked under that for simply reporting, tweeting, or speaking about what was going on in Tripura. Not for participating in what was going on in Tripura, but for talking about it. A bunch of lawyers made themselves an independent committee, appointed themselves as an independent fact-finding committee, went to Tripura, came back and reported on what they claimed they had seen. And as a result of that, they were booked under UAPA, the anti-terror law, which became a big story. After this is the next big one, where 2 journalists have been arrested out on bail right now. I also want to tell you what their own organization that employs them has to say. But before that, we'll go across to Arindam for the details of this action. Arindam, these two journalists who are in Tripura, at what point did they come to Assam? They made claims of how they were not being allowed to move from the hotel. Their organization says they were arrested after dark, no legal process followed. What happened here?
Yes, both these female journalists from Delhi were detained in Karimganj district of Assam bordering Tripura. They were detained on information or instructions from the Tripura police that such and such vehicle was moving towards Assam with such and such occupants in that car, and they needs to be detained. So accordingly, the Assam police in Karimganj district acted and have detained the 2 journalists in Nizam Bazar police station. And after that, they come to know that the Tripura police was coming to take them into their custody. The main allegation or the main FIR that has been filed against both these journalists, they tried to spread misinformation about Tripura. They tried to malign the image of Tripura and have spread wrong news about the alleged violence which broke out in Tripura after the violence which broke out in Bangladesh during Durga Puja. So there was a report that after a violence broke out in Bangladesh during Durga Puja, where Hindu idols and temples were vandalized, there was a backlash in Tripura, in Dharmanagar area in North Tripura, where mosques were vandalized. The Muslim population was targeted, and there were atrocities and assault on the Muslim population. So accordingly, these 2 journalists went there to file reports according to the assignments that they have been given from their organization, and they were touring the state for 2 weeks in Dharmanagar area. But when they were about to come back with their reports, they were served notices in their hotels in Tripura, asked them to file statements. But they have said that they haven't received the statements, and they accordingly move ahead towards Assam through Karimganj district. So in Karimganj district, the Karimganj police, by getting information or instructions from the Tripura police, have detained both these female journalists who were hailing from Delhi. And after that, the Tripura police came to take them into their custody. The main allegation or the main FIR was filed against them was that they tried to spread misinformation or try to malign the image of Tripura. And accordingly, they were taken into custody. But today, the magisterial court in Tripura have granted bail to both these female journalists on bail bonds.
Okay, so bail bonds and condition, of course, put there by the court, but clearly not seeing any merit in keeping them in jail at this point of time, and so relief coming in. Thanks, Arindam, for joining us and giving us those details. Now, of course, the organization for whom they work released a statement, and they said that our reporters have been arrested by the Tripura police, who have failed to provide any warrant, and that due procedure for arresting women was not followed. Now, this is a very, very grave charge that is being made about due procedure not being followed for arresting women, that sheer harassment and targeting of press to suppress them from reporting on facts. Let me also go across to Mr. K Venu, who's joining me this evening, because Mr. Venu, when we see instances like this where journalists, and in this case, young journalists who were there to cover a story on ground, report on what they are seeing, it does raise a question of, is it really about law and order, or is it in a way to intimidate the press?
Tanvi, this is, if you ask me, this is a pure and simple political strategy adopted by the ruling regime, BJP, to intimidate the media. There are numerous other occasions, Tanvi, where the media has simply tried to report a situation, whether it was the Delhi the riots or, but more, more universally used. This playbook has been used by UP Chief Minister Adityanath. As you know, Siddiq Kapan did not even reach Hathras, and he was arrested. UAPA, 1 year he's in jail. His lawyer says that they haven't even got a proper charge sheet. The charge sheet was delivered about 6 months ago, and he hasn't even received a fully indexed proper charge sheet. UP police has filed several FIRs against the Wire. One for reporting a demolition of a mosque in Baramaki, which 50 other papers had reported. Now, the same section, Tanvi, 153A, that was used in Tripura, has been was put on the Wire reporters in the case of Baramaki, that mosque demolition. Now, 153 is about spreading enmity between communities. The way they're using 153, Tanvi, no reporter can ever cover a riot. If there's a riot, if there are two communities involved, or for that matter, when Babri Masjid was demolished, reporters could, if today such an event happens, you can't report it because all the journalists who are reporting it, or all the lawyers who are, or other activists who are protesting it, all kinds of other cases put on them, and UAPA being the most weaponized of all of them. So this is pure politics. This is clear subversion of Article 19, 1A, freedom of expression, which the Editors Guild has in the past on several occasions. Editors Guild, Delhi Union of Journalists, various press clubs have brought to this nation's attention on how media has been curbed. Media has been deliberately sought to be curbed from reporting events. So,
right. Mr. Venu, you make a very valid point, and that's the one that I wanted to just focus a little bit more on, because it will come down to how reporters on ground cover a story, cover a sensitive story, a riot or any communal incident that's taking place. To begin with, if we just focus on this part, and you said the way they're using these sections, which essentially refers to promoting enmity or inciting sentiments, and those are the sections that are being used against journalists, and that becomes a problem. Now, there have always been protocols and systems put in place as to how you cover such sensitive incidents, what you say, what you show. To your mind, in the coverage that we've seen of Tripura, or even the Barabanki incident, or even the Hathras incident, is it a case where reporters are crossing the line, or is it genuinely a case of just an extremely sensitive establishment?
Tanvi, whether reporters are crossing the line can only be established by the judicial authorities. How can the police decide that UAPA, a terror act, should be imposed on a reporter who's reporting? If the reporting is, say, false, or if the reporting is not accurate, you have 100 other remedies. You can go to you can file a defamation suit, which they've been doing, of course, and you can file other cases. You can file a simple defamation case with the police. But UAPA, invoking 153A, which is a non-bailable, how can a reporter report a communal situation,
right,
when 153 is imposed on them, which is fanning, enmity between communities? Because any report will necessarily be read by people and will necessarily, raise, emotions to a higher pitch. So what does the government want? What does the police want? That one should stop reporting riots, one should stop reporting communal incidents, simply because the next day when it appears in the newspaper or the television channels, or if Mirror now shows it, it causes a more sort of tension between communities. It will cause some tension between communities. When truth, when you show the truth, it does cause, hurt to people. So what is the idea that the truth should not be shown? I mean, I really don't get it.
Right. No, absolutely. And, one very interesting part that I found in what the police said is that one of these journalists who was on location and showed what had been set ablaze. And they said that this hasn't come, so far in our investigation. So far, your investigation into the violence that actually took place and the vandalism that actually took place hasn't even come to fruition, hasn't even finished, but you've decided that what journalists are saying and reporting is untrue and is problematic, and you've gone after them.
True. Tanvi, the Tripura High Court has asked for a report from the police. For heaven's sake, wait for the report to come,
Yeah.
So, I mean, the police has not even fully investigated. What is the police saying? So far, there's no evidence of mosques being burnt, but the reporters, apparently, the reporters are there, and the people there have spoken about how, some mosques, were vandalized. Now these are reports which maybe the police is trying to confirm, or investigators are trying to confirm. But Tanvi, here I would also like to clearly point out that reporters, journalists are never known to fully trust the police. You know what happened in Hathras.
Yes.
They were all in denial. They denied that rape happened. Even in Barabaki, they denied that the mosque, some of the, the holy, whatever, the books, etc., were vandalized. So the police's job is to immediately deny, because the police. I was just listening to Justice Gupta recently, a few years ago, who retired from the Supreme Court, who was the actually Chief Justice of Tripura High Court. So he was saying that the police are known to just serve the political masters. They're not really honoring the oath of their,
you're absolutely right. We must put out the police version, but we must also see for ourselves what is visible and what has happened. And I think, the ground reportage and people who are on ground reporting on what they're seeing, recording it and bringing it to fore. If you start doubting their reportage, then we are in big trouble as to how we're going to go about bringing the stories to the rest of the country. Mr. Venu, I appreciate you taking the time out. Thank you so much for speaking with us. This is an extremely concerning situation. Let's first talk about what happened there and the extent of damage, what really went on, who has been held accountable for that. You ask even journalists in Tripura, while they say it looks like, to the rest of the country, it looks like something that became an issue blown out of proportion. It wasn't so bad, but it did happen. And the details even they aren't getting from the local administration. For those who actually tried going there to bring out the stories, if we take action like this in case after case, it is going to put a big question mark on press freedom. Take action against the culprits who resorted to this violence. Take action against the culprits who are spreading fake news 24/7 in this country on social media, inciting people, dividing people, before you actually start targeting the people who are supposed to bring out the facts and the real story.